I'm here in the Tecozualta Valley in the state of Hidalgo in Mexico. And this is a place that's been inhabited by human beings for thousands of years. Since at least the period BC, during which time the Chupiquaro culture, which is widespread throughout Guanajuato and Querétaro and around here as well. Oh, there's some animal. Oh my god. And after the Chupiquaro culture was here, they started building some structures here and settling, living here. And in the time of Teotihuacan, the great pyramid near Mexico City, they built a temple here, which I'll show you in a second. And that's, even though Teotihuacan, the main cultural center of Mexico at that time, collapsed and the whole city fell apart and was abandoned in the 6th century, here that didn't happen. And the culture that was living here continued to flourish up until around the year 1150 or so, when there was a great disaster, and nobody knows what it was, but wiped out people left and right. Perhaps some kind of pandemic, or perhaps it was a drought that caused famine. And they haven't figured it out yet. That's a common thing that happened in many cultures in this region and throughout the entire continent of North America. But afterwards, other people moved in. The Otomi lived here, and other places north of here, other places that I visited. And today we're going to look at one of the sites that they built called Pahñu. Pahñu. No, sorry. Today we're going to look at one of the sites that they built called Pahñu. So here's a map of Pahñu. You can see that here there's a big cliff that goes like this, and around like this, and like this. And so this is the only land that is there. And there are some unexcavated buildings here, which you'll see in a second, and some plazas, platform that makes up the main plaza, and the pyramid, which is the temple to the god, the fire god Yozipa, the house of the governance, and some more buildings over there, which I didn't get a chance to see. And here we see that there's some sort of platforms carved into this rock, or some kind of seats, or I'm not even sure what it is. If this is an unexcavated mound, there's probably something juicy in there, but we don't know. Only a portion of this site has been excavated. Over there, there's another slight rise in the ground, and it looks like that's another, maybe the remains of a building. And then, of course, over here, the main ruins. There could be something like that under there. Sort of gives you an idea of what it would have looked like before it was dug up. This is a garambuyo. This is a food. You can eat the berries that grow on this cactus. In March, during the spring equinox, a ceremony called Antzoya, the flaying, might have taken place here. In this ceremony, a captured enemy warrior was sacrificed in ritual combat. The prisoner, with one leg tied to the ground and carrying fake weapons, could confront a local warrior who was not only free to move but also used real weapons. It's not very fair. If he was injured, he was taken to the temple where his heart was torn out. If the prisoner resulted victorious, his life was spared, and he was made an Otomi warrior. So, this is an altar. This is an altar that's in the shape of a barrel cactus. It's inspired by a barrel cactus. There's not one in sight, but I'll find one. And there used to be a ceremony done here when an enemy's warrior was captured. He would have to fight an Otomi warrior, but it wasn't a fair fight because the enemy was given fake weapons and the Otomi warrior was given real weapons. But if the enemy somehow managed to win, then not only was his life spared, then he would himself become an Otomi warrior and a respected member of the tribe. However, if he did not succeed, his heart was ripped out, and that would happen here on this altar. Human sacrificial altar. You can see that there's still some of the stucco left on this structure. Now, I am pretty sure that this is a platform for viewing what happens on the main plaza, which is on the other side. This is the main plaza. You can see there's some of these very Dr. Seuss looking palm trees growing here now. So here I am in the principal plaza of the site of Pahñu. And I'm going to take a look around and tell you about this place. And there is the main pyramid. And you can see that chunks of it are missing on that side. And I'm not sure why that is. It could be that when it was buried, it was completely buried in earth, that that just eroded. Or it could be, as happened to many pyramids in the 20th century, that someone tried to blow it up with dynamite to find treasure inside. So this was the temple of Yozipa, which was the fire deity. And there were lots of rituals having to do with fire that were conducted in this place. Now, as you can see, these are quite large steps. And pyramids tend to have very large steps. And one of the reasons that they do so is to make you walk in a very certain way. Because they want you to walk like this, with your head bowed to the ground. It shows reverence and respect. Now you can see, this is the part of the pyramid that I'm allowed to climb, it looks like. There was a temple up there, overlooking the valley below. So what this pyramid represented was the primordial mountain at the center of the universe. There's the main plaza, where all kinds of rituals and events would take place. And I guess that's seating over there. Allow people to view or maybe to take part in some of the rituals. Over there was another building of some kind. Now we have only the pyramidal foundation remaining. Now, what this pyramid that I'm on, what this represented was the primordial mountain, or possibly the center of the earth, the entrance to the center of the earth through this magical, sacred, primordial mountain. And it was also a fire mountain. There were rituals here done with fire, consecrating things with fire, sacrifices that were burnt, including human sacrifices. And they found here some traces of that. They found skulls. They found obsidian blades for um, cutting out hearts and that sort of thing. There was a cult of fire here. It's rare that you get to see a cross section of a pyramid like this. But you can see that originally there was a smaller pyramid, and then they added more to make it bigger, resulting in a bigger outer layer. And a lot of pyramids were built in this manner, with smaller buildings inside them, and then built up and enlarged over time. Now over there is a sacred mountain that's kind of difficult to see in the distance, but I'll try to zoom in. Now it's shaped like an eagle. You can see the mountain in the background. See that there was some black paint there, and some white paint here, and maybe even some red paint, though it's kind of hard to say. Maybe it was just red stone. Now it's actually kind of daunting to go down. Now, you'll see a lot of tourists at pyramid sites try to walk up the pyramid like this and taking these giant steps, which is a very tiring way to walk up a pyramid, but also it is wrong and does not show respect. Now, if you reach the end, you're supposed to turn around and continue a zigzag. Now, one of the rituals involved erecting this long pole in the middle of the plaza during the month of August, when the fruit was falling and ripening, the harvest time. And this was a representation of the god Yozipa that was put on top of the pole, made of amaranth and honey, made of sweets, and in the shape of a bird. And the people at the bottom are trying to replicate the movement of a serpent. As you can see, there's someone beating a drum. And others would climb on top of the posts to try to reach the god that was up there. And they would do sacrifices. They would burn things at the altars. And you can see that there's lots of chunks of this pyramid missing. Actually, most of the back is missing. Just where I'm heading now. Here in the back, we can see the original steps of the first pyramid. It was later covered up by this wall and more pyramid. And here's the original wall. And this one probably dates to around the year 300. The building of this probably dates to around the year 300, and in the year 300 it was built and offerings were placed in the foundations in the temple at the top. And around the year 550, at the time of Teotihuacan, something happened and the first temple burned down, and they took out all of the offerings that were inside of it, and they decided to build a second larger pyramid around it. And that's what we see here. So now there's sort of a mess of the outer layers of the pyramid and the inner layers of the pyramid due to erosion and excavations. That's what we have left. This looks like maybe some kind of rain gutter. One thing you might not expect in this desert valley is to see such a giant swimming pool. But actually, there's lots of water in the city nearby, which is called Teotihuacan. And this is the Teotihuacan Valley. There's a geyser, a natural geyser that erupts. There's also hot springs and spas and saunas and all that sort of stuff. And that's one of the reasons that the people settled here. There were springs all over the place. And there still are, and plenty for water. Actually, when this was inhabited, it would have been totally different. It would have looked forested, especially up here on the plateau. There would have been a pine forest or a cedar forest. And that all changed very drastically only after contact with the Spanish. And the Spanish brought their sheep and their cattle, and they ate all the plants that were growing here, and then they burnt down all the trees, and now we have this semi-desert landscape that never recovered. Here are the berries of the garambuyo. You can see. That's good. It's kind of like a blueberry. Watch out for snakes here. You can still see some pottery there. Actually, there's ceramics all over the place. If you look under your feet, you'll see that there's shards of pots pretty much all throughout here. You can see it's just almost paved with ceramic. All kinds of pot shards, and that one looks like it's painted red there too. You can see that there's some kind of glaze on that piece of pottery, but really the entire ground is just completely covered in it. Here you can see that there's something carved into the stone, petroglyph. Even bigger chunks of ceramic. There's enough to make hundreds of pots if you were to put it all back together. You can see another, looks like a little niche that was carved out there. Some other things carved out here that may have been for offerings. Now I'm going to try to go down into this crack and get to the bottom of the cliff, or at least a platform. And here, there's a passage to go down, but it's going to be a bit treacherous of a climb. Flies here. So here at this platform, this is facing the east, and here the sun would rise, and on the days of April 19th and August 23rd, I believe, the sun would rise over a prominent mountain peak over there, and it would rise up here and continue up this passage that I'm about to show you, and it would cross over the House of the Government, over the pyramid and the main plaza, and it would go set on the other side of, in the other canyon that's over there. And on those 2 days, those were their 2 most important holidays here. One marked the beginning of the rainy season, and on that day there would be sacrifices of infants done in the main ceremonial plaza. And on the day in August, there would be sacrifices done of enemy soldiers who would have their, they would go through the flaying ceremony, which I described, and then they would have their hearts cut out. You can see here, the sun would rise and follow this path through the sky that way towards the ceremonial plaza. As you can see, people carve in their names and random letters and signs and things, heart signs. It seems that tourists like to leave their mark here, but it just shows you that the stone is very soft and that this was carved out by human hands. And here is the platform, and the sun rises like this, and its path goes over there and sets over there. Of course, there are very interesting acoustic properties of this place. And then the sun, following this path, emerges and goes over the petroglyphs, which are carved into the rocks up here. Now there's the petroglyph, and it's kind of hard to see right now. Here's an explanation of what it is. It's the earth monster, part crocodile and part fish, which existed before the creation of the world. And its body was divided in 2 and gave shape to the higher levels of the heavens and the lower levels of the underworld. Here you can see that there are other petroglyphs, perhaps marking the path of the sun in the horizon. And there's, of course, some big hill here, which is not excavated yet, and is most likely some kind of ruin as well. You can see that it's made up of many small rocks. It's probably some kind of wall. Here you can see some more carved platforms. Unclear what they were for.